Welcome to Tracks to Success, brought to you by Presentation Partners. This is the podcast that brings you inspiring people and their inspiring stories. How did they find their way to the top, and how can their path help you do the same? Here's your host, network broadcaster, executive, and entrepreneur, Kraig Kann.
Right now on this all-new edition of Tracks to Success, he's one of the most recognized voices in sports television and one of the most polarizing figures as well. A man who got his start at a young age, climbed the ranks to the network, and has become a fixture calling big games and big events. Born in Florida, he is the son of a broadcasting legend and has carried on the name and paid tribute to his late father on a few memorable occasions. But this announcer has done it his way, with his style, and to those who know him, is as fun off the cuff as he is polished at setting the scene and handling the big moment. He's had his own shows, written his own book, and found family not once but twice, with 4 kids between them, giving him his own opportunity to make the same impact his late great father did. So what makes him tick? What ticks him off? Why does he seem to tick off others while being the voice and the face of a network he's so devoted to? His name is Joe Buck. His inspiring story and this Season 2 debut edition of Tracks to Success starts now. Well, Joe, I can't thank you enough. This is the debut of Season 2 on Tracks to Success, and I try to stay close to my roots in sports broadcasting, and I want to have somebody that I admire, that I think a lot of, to help me kick off the new season, and you are it. Tag, thank you so much. I appreciate this.
Yeah, it's either that or you wanted to have somebody on that said yes, and here I am. So I'm sure Costas said, maybe later and right on down the line, and you got stuck with me. So here we go.
I hardly feel stuck. First things first, you have your own new podcast, which I am a subscriber to, by the way. Just jumped onto that. And the question is, Daddy Issues is the title of it. Why? And also, why did you decide to do one? What was the kind of motivation behind that?
Man, I can't answer either of those two questions. I really wish I could. No, I'm kidding. Daddy Issues, I think I wrote a book a handful of years ago that is one of the best things I've ever done for myself. It was mildly successful, so that was nice. But I told the publisher then, with the book agent from CAA sitting there, and he probably started to sweat when the words came out of my mouth. But I said in the first meeting, I honestly don't care if one person buys this book or 1 billion people buy this book. I just want to do it for me, because I've been on TV long enough. I've done enough big events where I think people who care about this kind of stuff, I'm not assuming most do, but those who do probably have an opinion on me, and they have no idea who I am, what I'm about, what I've gone through, and how lucky I know I am. And part of me being lucky is being born when I was to whom I was, if that makes sense. To my dad, Jack Buck, who is a Hall of Fame announcer in baseball and football, did the Cardinals for 50 years, was a Hall of Fame dad in his own way. And my mom, who was for a short time on Broadway and used to being on a stage and in front of people. And I just soaked all this stuff in when I was a kid. And I was with my dad everywhere as a little boy, in every National League city by the time I was 12. And for whatever reason, he and I became best friends. He has 7 other kids, but I was the one that kind of cut through. And I took every advantage I could from being in basically a master's class with one of the best to ever do it. But I think somewhere inside me, since I started in this business myself, is that little voice that says, you didn't earn it. It's that little voice that's always, when I was doing the World Series at 27 saying, you're going to be found out to be a fraud. You're just somebody's kid, and you shouldn't be sitting here. And maybe at that age, at that time, I don't know, maybe you could make that case. But I think I'll always live in my dad's shadow. And thank God we were as close as we were. But there's always that sense with me. And so it was kind of, it's daddy issues in the best possible sense. Mm-hmm. Oliver Hudson, who's the co-host, is Goldie Hawn and Kurt Russell's son, Kate Hudson's brother, Wyatt Russell's brother. He's got family issues where he's just dealing in the shadow of really everybody that he sits at a dinner table with. And we have fun with it. We enjoy it. And it's been a nice through line for a podcast because everybody, good or bad, has their own daddy issues. Yeah. And so we've enjoyed it. And the podcast, I think it's along the same lines as the book. I think people don't really still know who I am. I can't assume everybody bought the book. So this is another way to kind of show my personality and really open the door to my fears, my insecurities, and everything else. So it's been a blast. We have fun, and I'm glad I'm doing it.
Well, I will say this. Now I know why you're the storyteller you are, because you basically just ran through about 7 of my questions. So congratulations on that.
Sorry, we can go back over.
This is good. This is good. This is exactly what I want, Joe. And the thing that I think, because I've looked through the book, I've taken some notes on the book. I think it's because from what I'm hearing from you, you felt like, all right, this is an opportunity to be less scripted than I have to be when I'm doing MLB or NFL or golf even, which we'll get into. Gives you a chance to show some of those things behind the scenes and open up where you can't do that when you're calling a Red Sox-Yankees game.
Yeah, not unless I hijack it.
Yeah.
Not unless I just make it about me. And I think that's kind of been my style. And to some people, I don't know that they get that or that they even I don't want to say even if they do, if they appreciate it. Maybe they don't. But I always try to get out of the way. I mean, after all, I'm doing TV, and it's different than doing radio. And it's also very different than doing a specific team's TV or radio. So when you show up, and it's the age-old thing that I've dealt with since I was in my mid-20s, and I'm 51 now, as the national guy at the time of the year when their diehard fans care the most and are the most emotionally involved, we show up and I have to yell and scream and get excited for a home run that was just hit against you as a fan. And it's kind of a weird place to be because I used to do the Cardinals and I used to do the games one-sided. And if the Cardinals hit a home run, we're all doing handsprings. And if the Cardinals gave up a home run, you call it entirely differently. It's almost like a dejected home run call because it just hurt the scoreboard. So that's really, yeah, you're right. I mean, I don't really feel like I can show who I am in those big events because it's not appropriate. So I have to find other avenues, and whether it's being on Brockmire or doing the podcast or going on Stern or doing your podcast, whatever it is, I like to have the opportunity to just show who I am.
Well, that's a cool thing. And we're going to talk about some of those games and whatnot in just a little bit. So the book, all right, I'm sure you've talked about it a lot with a lot of people on various platforms. So it's called Lucky Bastard, My Life, My Dad, and the Things I'm Not Allowed to Say on TV. And the title in and of itself, I mean, really opens you up to a lot of, okay, please answer this, answer that. I already got the answer as to why you felt compelled to write it. Let's talk about your dad briefly here. And what I want you to do is I want you to finish these little sentences for me, okay? So I'm going to leave you an open door for a minute or so on each one. Number one, for me, Jack Buck was blank.
Egoless, selfless, somebody who was very emotional in a good way, loved what he did. Even when he was at his sickest with Parkinson's and diabetes and pacemaker, couldn't wait to bust out of the door of our house to get into his Lincoln and drive down and do Cardinal games or get on a plane and go do Monday Night Football or whatever he was doing that day. He was the best example that I could have for how to broadcast, but more importantly, how to be a man, how to be a dad, how to be a friend, and how to appreciate life. And I was really lucky. I know that.
Yeah. Number 2, my relationship with him growing up was blank.
I mean, I was all in. I couldn't get enough. It's not the perfect end of the sentence, but I missed him a lot because he was gone a ton. And when he was gone, I didn't want to act like an idiot kid, so that when he was home, I was missing out on things or being disciplined by my mom or him because I was a little punk. So I really walked the straight and narrow as a kid. I think everybody in my family and in my friend circle would tell you that. And so I maximized the time I had with him. I idolized the man. And, that's the best I can say, whether your dad's a Hall of Fame announcer or does whatever.
Yeah, many did. Number 3, when it comes to sportscasting, I look at my dad as
the best radio announcer I've ever heard. And I'm biased, but as far as him doing radio football, which is not easy to do, I thought he was really underrated. And for me, him doing radio baseball with his description, his sense of humor, his timing, his kind of wackiness that would get in there every once in a while, he was it. So I realize, everybody bows, rightfully so, to the Vin Scully statues, and I think of Vin more as the TV guy, even though that's not fair to him. And I think of my dad as a radio guy that got a chance to do national big-time TV toward the end of his career and really wasn't himself for a couple of years on the air. And it was hard for us as a family to watch and listen to it because you wanted that personality that you heard come out every night on the radio to really shine on national TV. But again, like we talked about, that's not really the time for that. That's the time to do the game and shut up and enjoy it. And so it was frustrating, but as an announcer, I think he had no peer as far as calling radio football or baseball.
Go crazy, folks. Go crazy.
Yeah.
Two more. For people who think it was easy being Jack Buck's son, I would tell you blank.
You're right. I would tell you that the positives far outweigh the negatives. I think the negatives were that I was aware as a little kid that a lot of eyes were on us. A lot of eyes were on me in a small town like St. Louis, going to a lot of the same restaurants whenever we were all together. The other negative would be what I talked about, having that voice in your head and always being compared to a Hall of Famer. But that can be a positive too, because that can make you work hard and that can make you really give your best every time out and try and live up to all that. So the positives were literally being 2 seats away from my dad every night of the summer and watching the game, listening to him in a little handheld headset, like a little headphone almost that I could hold up to my ear, and I could watch him. I could watch his preparation. I could watch his mannerisms. I took all of that in from the time I was able to remember things up until the day he died. So those positives make the negatives almost laughable.
You soaked up more than most could ever get from somebody just by being there, which is an amazing opportunity. Last one, the greatest thing my dad, Jack Buck, did for me is blank.
Leave me alone when I started broadcasting, and not hover and not critique and not overly almost in a way not overly applaud me, not make it like I was making him proud. I think he let me understand as a young guy when I was 19 and 20 doing AAA baseball, and then when he was my broadcast partner at the age of 21, he really held his pride in check when it came to me. Now, he told everybody else, he told umpires and friends and people in other cities, he'd pop a cassette into his car and play my play-by-play for them and go, listen to this kid, listen to how good he is. And he did an interview with a guy, John Carney, who my sister's on the air with every day. And it's from 2001, before he went into the hospital and eventually passed away in 2002, where he said, I think my son is the best broadcaster in baseball now, and I think he's the best I've heard, not just as a young guy, but he's the best I've heard, and he's a nice guy and people like him. Now, did he say any of that stuff to me directly? No. He did not make it seem like I was trying to earn his approval. He just let me find my way. And for that, I'm eternally grateful. It helped our relationship. I guarantee you it made us closer. But it also made me work hard and know that I was starting to stand on my own 2 feet. And I didn't have him, daddy, to check in with every 5 seconds, sucking my thumb. I was a man at a young age doing a big boy job and trying to do my best and succeed.
See, you just proved right there in me saying, hey, finish this sentence with a couple of thoughts, how much your dad truly meant. I mean, for those out there listening to this that might think, yeah, he was your dad and he didn't mean as much, they are so far off base. You gave me way more right there than I thought I was going to get with those answers, and it tells me everything. Let's talk about your life as it pertains to your career now, based upon the book, and I said I've scanned through it. First off, does your mom, Carol, get enough credit? Because we just spent time talking about your father. Does your mom get enough for where you are today?
Absolutely not. And you know, I think those closest to me are aware of all that, but you're asking, so I'm telling you, I think she not only helped mold me and make me who I am and provided the real critiques at the ends of games, much more so than my dad did, but I think she helped mold him. You know, it's no coincidence in my mind that the one part that had nothing to do with my dad or our side of the equation is that Harry Carey was fired by the Cardinals in the late 60s, and that all coincided with my arrival, but more importantly for him, his beginning of a relationship with my mom. And I think he was happier. I think he was in a position to really have a partner and somebody who he ran all of his banquet lines with, and she would punch him up, as they say in the business, and make him funnier. And she's a performer to this day. Yeah. I mean, somewhere in her head, she thinks she's Elizabeth Taylor and won't tell anybody her age, but she's 80 and still great and funny and with it. And, you know, she definitely doesn't get enough credit, but that's not really the exciting part of the story. It's more, you know, oh, Jack Buck's son is doing X, Y, and Z.
Yeah. Well, maybe that's where you get it from. Let's have some fun here. You were not exactly the most fit kid at age 7 or 8, right? I mean, I can relate to that, by the way.
Yeah, I was a fat kid. I don't think I had my first pair of jeans until the husky section was created by some masochist somewhere, and I could shop in Target or wherever the hell we were, and this is in the 70s too. So I mean, they were bell bottom.
Yeah,
I was a thick kid, and my grandfather played in the NFL. My aforementioned mom's dad played for the Chicago Bears, and he was one of the really great athletes to come out of this city, you know, in his era, and was on Hallis's all-time Bears team and whatever. I get a lot of my athletic ability, and I have some from him, but I was too slow to use my arm in football, so I became a pitcher in baseball. But as a little boy, yeah, I look back at those pictures, and I'm thinking, Mom, how about a glass of water and a salad once in a while?
I can relate. You could put this underneath my vertical jump. I'm holding up a pen. That's the way I was, but I played every sport. Now in St. Louis, it's a really cool thing to be able to say, I went to this high school, or everybody asks you what high school you went to. Same thing in Chicago where I grew up. Your high school was what, and were you that kid that everybody knew at that time? Okay, yeah, he's going to be that guy. He's going to have a microphone.
I think by the time I was a senior, if you go back to my high school yearbook and they do the 25 years hence, mine was hosts Saturday Night Live, which I think I'm proud of more so now than I was then. And I'm working Lorne Michaels as best I can. I need to send him like a Xerox copy of that, just because I think it would be funny. But I think when I was littler and kind of in middle school and early part of high school, I certainly didn't feel that way. And I don't think that anybody really looked at me that way. My senior year, I broke my neck playing football, and the football was the big sport at my high school, Country Day, to answer your question, which is a prep school through and through, coat and tie every day. It was, kind of like Dead Poets Society without Robin Williams or anybody standing on their desk. Yeah. And so when I broke my neck and we had our pep rally, I emceed it as an 18-year-old kid standing in front of the school and introducing this guy, this speaker, this teacher, this whatever. And so maybe it was all there, and I wasn't really aware of any of that. And I'm guarantee you none of the other kids cared, but it was starting to unearth itself back then, but I think it would be revisionist history to say that people said, oh, someday you're going to be doing the World Series on network TV.
Okay, but when did you know that you wanted to go that path, that you wanted to make this your living? Was it when you were a bat boy for the Cardinals or running around the field sitting next to your dad? When was that I will be a sportscaster?
I don't think I can remember ever wanting to be anything else other than a player, a pitcher. I was good enough to try out. I guess anybody's good enough to try out, but good enough to try out and have somewhat of a chance at Indiana to try and pitch and play. And I just wasn't good enough. I didn't throw hard enough. But I was good in high school. But other than that, I just wanted to be my dad. I didn't want to be an astronaut, a lawyer, a fireman, or whatever kids dream about being. Even as a little boy, I just wanted to be with my dad. And I think, he would tell you if he were here. My mom would tell you if she could get on her phone without hitting the wrong buttons, that when I was 3, 4, 5 years old, I would sit in my dad's office. And even though I was a rambunctious, typical little boy, I was smart enough to realize that if I wanted to stay in his office while he either did work or while he was on the phone kind of with his radio voice on, I had to be quiet. And I was quiet because I was just mesmerized by what he did. So I think even when I was probably under 5, something inside me was like, that's what I want to be. And I just got lucky to do it.
This season, Tracks to Success is proud to have the support of Ahead. They're true innovators of fine headwear, and Ahead's been supplying the most prestigious events and outfitting the world's top golfers for 25 years. And if you're looking to dress for success, Ahead is the perfect brand for you. So think ahead and look for it at pro shops and special events around the country. And here's your chance to save big. Visit aheadusashop.com now and use the code TTSPOD. That's TTSPOD and receive 20% off your purchase. Ahead, the finest in headwear, and now the official headwear of the Tracks to Success podcast, available at aheadusashop.com. Joe, you were talking about how you called AAA baseball at age 19, started calling Cardinals baseball in the early 90s, and then you were at Fox. By the time you were 25, that was in 94, Fox won the bid for the NFC package out of nowhere, it seemed like. I remember that stuff, and they obviously needed announcers. Maybe you in your head said, hey, how about me? Did you call David Hill? Who called David Hill? How did you How did you do that? How did it end up that all of a sudden you're there? And by the way, I heard you almost did some bass fishing.
Yeah, no, I did do bass fishing. I think properly asked, I heard that somebody almost caught a bass fish when you did it live on national TV. God, that was horrible. But I digress. To answer your question, I was incensed because I was always a CBS guy through my dad. My dad did CBS TV, and he broke Madden in. My dad did CBS Radio and was doing Monday Night Football. I mean, it was CBS all over our house. And I remember when Fox got in the game in '94, I was hosting a call-in show. What was I, 23, 24 years old, on KMOX radio in St. Louis, and that news came across the wire. And I was like, oh, my God, what a travesty. This is a joke. Who's going to do the play-by-play? Bart Simpson? And, I think Fox at that time had Joan Rivers and Married with Children and Homer and Bart Simpson, and that was about it. And so I never thought that I would be on the list to go there. I was just a couple of years into my time in St. Louis with the Cardinals, and the answer to the question is I didn't call David Hill or Ed Goren, who was more the hands-on guy for people that were going to get hired as play-by-play announcers. My mom at the Super Bowl knew Patty Goren, Ed Goren's wife. Ed Goren was a longtime CBS guy, and my parents knew all those executives at CBS, and he jumped ship and went to Fox. Yeah. He was one of the main reasons why Madden and Summerall went over there, Matt Millen and Dick Stockton went over there, and then they were looking for a new crop of young announcers. And my mom said, it took my videotape, unbeknownst to me and for sure unbeknownst to my dad, because he would have just not even let it happen, and gave the videotape to Patty Goren. They were friends, and she went back to the room that night and said, we got to listen to Jack and Carol's son, Joe. He's been doing the Cardinals for a few years now, and I'd never done football, and bring him out for an audition. And so they did, and I went out during spring training in '94, and I had done some play-by-play in the living room with my dad off a videotape of football. And I'd been around it enough to know the game, and I played it some, but I had never done it. And I went out, sat in a studio in L.A., put a headset on, sat next to Tim Green, who was my first partner for 2 years, and he and I did a game off a TV with producers talking in my ear, and it went really well. I knew it was going well 5 minutes into it. I felt comfortable, and I got up and left the studio, and like Slugworth and Willy Wonka, some other executive came up to me and whispered in my ear, because he didn't want Tim to hear it because they weren't sure on Tim. He said, you better get an agent because we're going to hire you. And so I flew back to Florida in spring training knowing that I was going to get hired at Fox. And I had, never seen my dad so proud when I came home and told him how well it went. And, when you talk about lucky, forget the bastard part in my book. I mean, the lucky is the timing of everything. Like Fox dropped out of the sky. They get the NFL. I faked my way through that for a couple of years. Then they get the rights to cover Major League Baseball. I've had them ever since. And that's what I came to Fox with as my resume was baseball. So I started doing that, and I've done it ever since. So the timing of all that stuff just worked out. That's really where the luck is, not just being my dad, my mom's kid.
Yeah, I'm thinking Super Bowls. I'm thinking World Series, and I'm also thinking Bassmaster Classics. Like you calling Jimmy Houston and Kevin Van Dam like reeling in fish left, right, and center. I mean, that talk about like being in the moment.
It was horrible. The moment was awful. And the show was an hour and a half long from Orlando, Florida, and all these different little lakes. I remember one of the lake was Lake Lulu. And we had all these bass fishermen on these bass boats bouncing up and down. And we had a meeting with them. And we said, okay, from 4:30 to 6 p.m. Tomorrow night, we're going to be on live on TV. So you're going to have to wear a microphone. You're going to have to wear an earpiece. You're going to have to remember to click the microphone on. You're going to have to remember to click the earpiece on. And Joe, this guy right here, is going to ask you questions while you're fishing. And about half of them remembered to turn their mics on, and the other half forgot to turn their earpieces on. So nobody could hear me. And then the ones that could hear me were talking and we couldn't hear them. Then we screwed up the weigh-in at the end of this live show, and I think we awarded the prize to the wrong winner, and it was just – the show was 90 minutes, and if it had been 91 minutes, it would have been 1 minute of dead air because I was done after 90 minutes. I had nothing else to say.
Oh, yeah. That's good stuff, man. Everybody's got one of those stories that's ever done this thing for a living. So lead MLB guy, 96. Lead NFL guy by 2002. I mean, that's – meteoric. That's a rise. You've already talked about that ascension and how fast it happened. I know what other people thought, and you've shared a little bit about that. People going, oh God, is this guy right? Did you feel you were ready for it? Did you truly believe in you that they hired the right guy, that you could be the guy?
Outside of that little voice that I think everybody has, whether you're announcing golf or, more importantly, playing golf, of like, can I really make this shot? Can I really do this? Am I going to pull the club back? And, am I good enough? Outside of that voice that everybody has, unless you're psychotic, I was not scared. I go back and I listened to the World Series in 96, and I was 27, and it was a major stage, and it was Yankee Stadium and their return to glory with Jeter and the core four and all that stuff, as we would come to know them. I was never intimidated enough to where it affected my performance. And then as you start and you settle in, the best thing that happened to me again was that I was partnered with Tim McCarver. I knew that anything that happened on that field, Tim had seen or been a part of himself, because he had broadcast forever. He played forever, played in 4 separate decades, which is amazing, especially at the position of catcher. And so my dad knew. My dad had 2 years that were not a lot of fun with Tim, but more importantly with the producer and the group at CBS when he took over when they fired Musburger in 90 and 91. My dad, when it was announced that I was going to do it and Tim was going to be my partner, nobody was happier than my dad, because he knew I was going to be protected. And Mike Shannon, who broadcast with us in St. Louis and was my dad's partner for thousands of years, called Tim and said, it's going to be a different experience with Joe. And I think the different experience was that I was more of a TV guy. And I think my dad was bringing a lot of radio skills to a new way of doing TV, and it wasn't a great fit. I grew up more in the TV era, and I think I really paid attention to all the things I knew strategic-wise about baseball through Mike and my dad. And I just deferred to Tim. And when he started accepting my viewpoint on national broadcasts as a 27-year-old and gave me a little bit of legitimacy, it was the greatest gift that I could have been given by somebody not in my family. And so I felt insulated, and that allowed me to do my job, and I never felt like I didn't belong.
McCarver, Aikman, Smoltz. I mean, I always feel like I learn something, when I'm watching the telecast, the broadcast. And to me, that's when you say I had somebody who covered my back, it becomes conversational as opposed to reporting. And that's what I feel is so great about the best tandems in sports broadcasting. Here's one for you. Baseball, which is a game of minimizing errors, right? Really, it boils down to that in some way. Would you say that you've made a lot or just a few in this rise to where you are now?
I would say if I made a lot, I don't think I would have lasted. I don't think that somebody who makes a lot of mistakes on national TV is going to hang in for close to 30 years. I don't think that's possible. Especially now, especially with social media, especially with the transition from really a one-man show and Rudy Martzke doing the Monday morning column and the third page of the sports section in USA Today down that left side. And thankfully he liked me and gave me, the all Rudy rookie team and the MVP or whatever he gave me, which I took note of. I mean, he used to hammer my dad, and I don't know if it was done out of guilt or if he legitimately liked me, but he gave me some more legitimacy in the business, as weird as that sounds. And now we've gone from that kind of a centralized, let's see who's good, let's see who's bad, to social media. So I think, it's always, these days, it's like a gotcha. Hey, you made a mistake. Gotcha. And I think real mistakes, not misspeaking or not, but real mistakes don't go unnoticed. And a pile up of real mistakes would get you fired. And so I think I've made my fair share, but my God, I've been on for thousands of hours on live network TV. And I think mistake-wise, I would put I would put my list up against anybody's 25 years in.
Yeah. Nothing you'd take back? Like one moment you're like, oh, God, that you think about all the time?
Oh, my God. Yeah, absolutely.
Give me one. Give me one.
Well, I mean, the one in golf is obviously Brooks Koepka's wrong girlfriend's name. I mean, that's as bad as it gets. Now, you know how this business works, and we had information guys in the back of the studio that's sitting on 18, and the guy's a longtime CBS information guy, and he handed me a card that had bad information on it. Now, I've never said his name. I never will. Those who are in the business could probably put two and two together, but it doesn't matter. It came out of my mouth, so it's my mistake. And so if I'm going to be, divorce myself from the mistake, then I have to divorce myself every time he handed me a great card that made it feel like or seem like I knew more about the PGA Tour than I actually did. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't work that way. So that was awful, because that was right at the end of really 5 days of all-day coverage on Fox, and we were starting to get our legs under us, and everybody, I think, felt good about what happened at Erin Hills. And then you say that, and Brad Faxon corrected it going off the air, which was the right thing to do. But that's the last taste in your mouth, and that was hard to take. And then I look back on the Randy Moss moment, and I'm surprised that came out of my mouth. That's just how that hit me, not just the fake mooning, but the ass against the goalpost part.
Yep.
And I had a real reaction. On one hand, it's like, it's a little much. On the other hand, I'm proud that I just kind of reacted, and I didn't hold back. I don't think that would ever come out of my mouth, even had that not happened. I don't think in today's world with social media, I don't think I would be free in my mind to say something like that. So you live and you learn, but those are the two that jump out in my mind. But if the list is less than 5 things after all these years, I can't really take myself to the woodshed, because it's not an easy job, as you know, and things are coming at you fast and furious. And the minute you're going down one track mentally, something happens in the game or in the broadcast that takes you to track 10 instead of track 1, and you feel like you always want to get back, and you never have time, and so there's a lot of factors that go into it, but those are definitely the two that jump out of my head.
Well, you went there already, so I'm going to jump ahead and then I'll go backwards. When Fox got the USGA package and jumped right into golf, was it A, Fox saying, Joe, we'd like you to do the golf, or B, you saying, Fox, I'd like to do the golf? Or maybe was it C, you saying, Fox, I love golf, I am doing the golf?
Yeah, it might be D. It was kind of like, they know I love golf. They know I'm obsessed with golf. My family certainly knows I'm obsessed with it. I've got 2-year-old twin boys that, if they're following me in the hallway in my house and I'm pantomiming my swing or my shoulder turn, both Blake and Wyatt will go, Daddy golf, Daddy playing golf. And I'm like, yep, in my head, boys, right now I'm on the first tee. So they knew, Fox knew that I was all in as a fan. But then it's a question of, and you and I could do seminars on golf coverage and how different it is than you think it is when you're sitting on a couch, and how much, to me, how much faster it actually is when you're sitting there than any other sport I do, because you're covering at times 156 players, but even in the heat of the moment, you've got players all over the place over multiple acres. You're not watching it with your own eyes. You're relying on other people's information, what hole you're jumping to, who it is, what they're putting for. And you have to trust a lot of pieces that you're not in control of, which is a really unnerving thing when you start. And then you've got partners and people on the air with you that are nowhere near you, and you have to try to not step on one another. So there was a real learning curve there for all of us, especially me. But I remember that day we were at the football seminar, and my boss, Eric Shanks, said, we finally kept something quiet at Fox. That we're going to have an announcement later today, and then I want to talk to you about doing it. And I still didn't know what it was, and they announced it. He called me, would you like to do it? And I thought long and hard about it. I didn't immediately go, absolutely, absolutely,
really?
I want to do it. No, because I'm smart enough to know what I don't know. And I'm smart enough. I've been in this business in some ways since I was 2. And I know that it's not like just flipping a switch and going, okay, you know the game somewhat because you're a 2 handicap, and that just means you can broadcast it, and we both know that's not the case. So I thought about it, wondered who I'd be doing it with, but I said yes, and then it started to take shape.
Did it hurt you personally when Fox and you and the team got ripped right away for the coverage?
Yeah, because I felt like everybody really put their heart and soul into it, and it was at a strange place in Chambers Bay, which is a phenomenal golf course. The greens were not in great shape, and the golf course was browned out. It wasn't the typical look of a U.S. Open. I remember Richard Sandomir, who's the main critic in the New York Times, ripped the quote-unquote Fox camera people for not being able to follow the golf ball. They're the same camera people that NBC use. There's no like full-time Fox golf camera people. They're all independent contractors who are like, oh, it's now wear a Fox hat instead of an NBC hat, and they were there running the cameras. It was just hard to see because it was so glary out there with the weather as perfect as it was. And then he ripped me for something that I supposedly said that Brad Faxon actually said. And that was frustrating. And I called him on it. It's one of the maybe 2 times I've ever called a critic. And I said, Richard, this is the New York Times. That didn't come out of my mouth. And he said, oh, I saw that on Twitter and I just went with it. I was like, what?
What?
So, yeah, that wasn't a shining moment, but did I take it personally? Absolutely. I pour everything I've got into every time we're on the air, and I was proud of the product for the first time. I think people are not really into giving a grace period. Nobody's interested in that. And I think when it went from NBC, where everybody's used to Johnny Miller and Dan Hicks, and obviously they're great, and Dan's a good friend of mine, and the way they produce telecast to us at a stranger place with a lot of controversy that was going on, it was a lot for the average viewer to digest if they really care about that stuff. So I take all that stuff personally, and then it inspires you to get better. And I think we progressively have, to where last year there were headlines about Fox's golf coverage is the best on TV. I saved a screenshot of that on my phone, and it was my background for the longest time, because I was proud of the fact that we did Pebble Beach the right way, and our production crew did shots and had ideas with drones that had never been done before, and people, I think, saw Pebble Beach in a different way than they typically see it every year on CBS.
It was terrific. Season 2 of Tracks to Success is brought to you by Presentation Partners. Presentation Partners is a unique team of award-winning executives helping you build a presentation others will be talking about. Presentation Partners teaches you the true art of storytelling. And if you haven't heard about their neuroscience of persuasion, you'll see how valuable it is to own it. Whether you're a company or an entrepreneur, Presentation Partners is the team you need behind you. For almost 15 years, they've helped clients raise millions in capital and countless dollars in sales simply by making top leaders successful presenters. The time is now to find your authentic voice and learn your authentic story. Presentation Partners, creating persuasive story presentations based on something other than just your good looks. All right. Talked about U.S. Open. You've called 20 MLB All-Star games, 21 World Series. That tops anybody at the networks. I didn't even mention Super Bowls. Do you ever just go for a walk in St. Louis, maybe it's with your kids or whatever, and in your head go, damn, I mean, I've been able to do this. I know I've had, this great upbringing, but still, I mean, wow.
Well, I know my dad would freak out if he were still alive. He's been gone for 18 years now. And I think, we were building a house at a time when he died, and I was at the hospital every day. He was in the hospital for 7 months and in the intensive care unit. I remember a night that I was there, and it was just the two of us, and he had a trach. So, I mean, the ultimate of ironies and just the saddest part of his stay in the hospital was that he didn't have a voice. This guy who made his living and had this beautiful, grovelly, awesome voice, couldn't speak. And so he was mouthing it to me. And he said, I hope me laying in here in the hospital as long as I have teaches you that when you're here, it's too late. So build your house, live your life, have fun, be happy, enjoy what you do. And I've really taken that forward. Now, am I a worrywart? Yes. Do I stress about things that I have no control over? Absolutely. Do I worry about my kids every time they walk out of the door? Yes. It's not realistic to be any other way. At least I don't know any other way. But I think the body of work and the way I've tried to go about it as a person, that's what I'm most proud of. I don't think anybody that has worked with me over these years would say I was a jerk or I wasn't a team player or I didn't give it my best or whatever it might be. And that's what they always said about my dad. Forget 20 World Series and Super Bowls and all that stuff. It's just, what kind of a person are you? And what kind of a dad are you? And what kind of a husband are you? And that's the important stuff. So do I walk around and recount my resume when I'm walking with the kids? Absolutely not. I try to be all in with my kids and my wife when I'm with them. And if my wife were sitting here, she'd throw up right now because she'd go, "Oh, you're on your phone too much." Well, I'm guilty. But I just kind of take what I have in front of me, do the best with it, and then when it's over, I will have done 10 times more than I ever thought I would. Yeah. And that's true now. Excuse me, and that's true in 5 years or 20 years. So I'm content, and I'm smart enough to know that I don't want to do anything else. I don't yearn to call anything else. I'm happy doing what I'm doing, and it's more than enough.
To this day, one of the best calls ever, one of his best calls ever, and also now one of your best calls ever. And we'll see you tomorrow night. Your dad's call at Kirby Puckett's home run. And then you used it. I mean, I'm sorry, but of all the tributes, that one is what stands out to me. That's what I think of when I think of the Bucks. One of the reviews of your book, Joe, says, quote, "With light humor and darker emotion, Buck candidly calls the game of his own life." Now, people that know you, and I've had a couple buddies call me when they knew I was going to be talking to you. They're like, the thing about Buck is he's really funny. He could be a stand-up comic. I mean, do you think you're pretty funny? Do people really tell you that? Because in the book you talk about... Go ahead.
What kind of an asshole would go, "I'm really funny"? I mean, just you need to be around me. You would be just laughing nonstop. No, I mean, I think I've got a quick wit. I think, however, I have reshaped my brain. I've reshaped my brain to be able to do two things: react in the moment, and at least in my head, if I'm not saying it out loud, come up with a funny line to attach to it. Yeah. Most of the time it's in my head. And B, remember names and numbers. And beyond that, I don't retain much. So I'm not that smart. I'm not that well read, but I'm able to do what I do, and like a lizard that gets his tail cut off and grows another one. I've reshaped my brain to be able to handle what I need to handle, and then I just sit there like a lump when I'm not on the air.
So when you're talking about this darker side, or not you necessarily, but what they say you talk about in the book, I mean, the darker side, are we talking about you almost losing your career and losing your voice over seriously, Joe, like hair transplants?
Oh yeah. Yeah. And I don't know, that was so funny to me. When you promote stuff, they're going to take the most sensational line out of the book. And that was done. I don't know who did it. It was Sports Illustrated. Somebody did it. And it was a line saying, I, Joe Buck, became addicted to hair plugs. Now in the paragraph it was in, and in the chapter it was in, it was all really tongue in cheek. That was not like, I'm making light of addiction. No, it's not saying that I'm actually addicted to something that is more painful than anything I've ever been through other than this in my life. That'd be psycho. And it was more of a joke. So then I had to answer, well, how do you become addicted to hair plugs? I'm like, I'm not. I'm just trying to fill the top of my huge head with hair so that when I put a headset on and I stand on TV, my fragile ego won't allow me to look totally bald, because I don't know. I think I pin it more on because I'm on TV, I needed hair. I just think it.
No, you don't.
No matter what I did.
No, you don't. Like bald is in. Follically challenged is in. Look at
not
McDonough.
With my head.
Oh,
not with my head. McDonough's got a little pea head. I have a huge, massive Herman Munster head, and if I did America a favor by putting hair on it to conceal some of my massive head.
The fact that you're open about it is a real cool thing. People need to give you some props for that. Okay.
Well, I mean, who cares really?
Right.
It doesn't matter. I don't understand that part of it. Like, it's funny.
It's probably because you're next to Aikman and he looks so good, right?
Right. I mean, his eyebrows basically are attached to the front of his hairline. That's his hairline. So that's annoying in and of itself. But I think when you say, for listeners of the podcast, I did 8 of them. Troy Aikman's number, ironically enough, now that I'm thinking about it. And the last one I did, you go under. So the first 5 I did, they did it while I was awake, and it's just excruciating. As they cut live hair follicles, literally cut it out of the back of your head and then cut them into the front of your head. That's what hair transplant surgery is.
No thanks.
It sucks.
No.
So about the 6th time, the doctor's like, you can go under for this operation, but it's another $2,500. I was like, are you kidding me? Sign me up. So then I went under, and when I went under the last time, they put the trach tube or whatever, the tube down my throat, and it was overinflated that was going to hold it in place, and it damaged the nerve that fired my left vocal cord. So I came out of the surgery talking like this, and I did a whole season of baseball and football kind of talking like this, but it progressively got better. But I was told early on, you have a paralyzed vocal cord, it could come back in 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years, or never. And when I went to see a specialist who's the best in the world, the guy's fixed Steven Tyler and Adele and right on down the line, this guy Steven Zeitels, he said, pretty much my experience is after 3 months, what you have is what you have. And if that was the case, then I was done. I was not going to be able to broadcast for the rest of my life. And fortunately, it came back. I was an outlier on that list, but yeah, I was shaken to my core. I was going through a divorce. I was depressed. I was worried about my daughters, and I thought my career was over. So that was a dark year, 2011, and everything's brightened since. And I'm glad I went through it when I did, and I'm thankful that I came out the other side with the majority of my voice back.
resilient. You've been through a lot, and a lot of people seem to take shots at Joe Buck for whatever reason. I'll tell you in a few minutes. I'll give you the compliment that stands out in my head, but I don't know if there's anything that you've taken to heart and you've actually gone, you know what? They're right. I need to do this or that. And what advice would you give others, maybe in the business or in any walk of life, that are getting cheap shots thrown their way?
Well, I just don't think that if you're young and starting in this business and you're doing something that's got a little bit of a viewership or listenership, that you should be on Twitter finding out if you're any good. I think you need to have time to settle in, grow, get better, find 2 or 3 people in your life. If it's your mom, it's your best friend, if it's an old professor that has an opinion that you really trust and will be honest with you, and listen to those people, listen to your tapes or your whatever files back and hear how you sound, and just be able to stand on your own 2 feet before you stick your wet thumb up in the air and check which way the wind's blowing, because it'll beat you down. Everybody listening thinks they're smarter than you. Everybody listening, sometimes it feels like just thinks you're a moron, and it's just not that easy. So I think the one thing I would say is don't try to sound like anybody else. And so when people said you sound too flat, you sound too dead-assed, I think I listened back to when Chris Collinsworth and I took over for Pat Summerall and John Madden. I was trying to do a Pat Summerall impersonation, which is ironic because when I started, I really didn't. I made it a point to not be a Jack Buck impersonator. Even with the "We'll see you tomorrow night," I didn't try to sound vocally like my dad. That was basically impossible anyway. But for Pat, who was the master of kind of the less is more and the economy of words, I tried to do that. He used to do Montana, Rice, touchdown, and then Madden would just go off. And so I was kind of doing the straight guy and not really having a ton of enthusiasm, or even though I was so thrilled to be there, I didn't let it show. And that's a criticism that I think was fair and forced me to be better and more myself. Also, coming out of the 2011 year from hell, when I got my voice back, I was like, I'm going to really just let it fly. And I have vocal strength back. I'm going to use it. And if people think I'm rooting against their team, so be it. They think that no matter what. So I'm going to do it my way. And until somebody taps me on the shoulder and says, get out of here, I'll keep doing it that way. And that's the best thing I can say about a criticism that I took to heart and really forced change.
Yeah. Among the reputations people have, or the things they say about big name sportscasters, everybody's kind of got their brand, if you will, or what people think about them. Jim Nantz, I would say classy and a friend of sports. Tirico, smooth, versatile, a really good storyteller. How would you describe you?
I think I'm kind of a rhythmic guy. I try to ride the feel of the crowd. I try to lay off if we've got really great audio from the field and you hear Aaron Rodgers or Dak Prescott screaming out the signals from the line of scrimmage. I try to fit myself in and around it. And I also I think I'm a good partner. I think I really make an effort to say what I have to say, what needs to be said, and get out of the way, either to allow for more crowd noise or allow the person I'm working with to have as much room as they possibly can to say and do whatever they want. And I'm there to be a teammate. I'm there to make them better and use them to make me better. So, I hear other people and I admire Jim and Al and Mike, and they're friends of mine, but I hear them doing it a different way. I don't feel compelled to talk that much, and it's worked for me, so I'm going to stick with it.
So here's what I actually wrote down, but I know this, I don't even need to read it, okay? My compliment of you is amazing, kind of based on what you just said. Aside from an identifiable voice, no question about it, you turn on a game, you know that's Joe Buck. An amazingly good sense for the moment. When to talk, when not to talk, when to lay out. And a lot of people can't do that. Who taught you that?
Man, I don't know. I think it's what feels right. And maybe it comes from being my dad's son and getting into this and almost feeling apologetic at the beginning. Like, I'm not going to take this thing over. Nobody's tuning in. And that is one thing my dad said to me. You know, if you get hit by a bus going into the game, they're still going to play the game and people are still going to watch. And they're not listening or watching to hear you. They want to watch or listen to the game. So realize that and broadcast that way. And to me, that means bring them as close to the experience on their couch or in their car to what is actually happening in the stadium. And that means a lot of crowd noise. That means a lot of natural sound. I put that stuff in my headset up as loud as I can and still be able to think, because I want to hear it. I want to hear when we've got that audio. Some play-by-play guys subdue all that stuff, and I think they end up talking right over all that. So I think you have to. That's just the way I've gone about it. I don't know that it's right or wrong, but I think it's the way I would want to listen to a game if I were sitting at home. I don't need somebody beating me over the head. And if I'm a professor in broadcasting, I would say being a play-by-play guy or being on TV is a study or an exercise in what you don't say as much as what you do. And you know, I hear other people at other networks, you know, not at the level of the guys that we're talking about, just sound like they're sprinting and they're giving you everything they've ever read about these two teams, and they can't wait to get these bullet points out, and they have it written down, so damn it, they're going to say it. Doesn't matter if it fits or not. And I think it takes confidence to not talk. I think it takes confidence because in your head, something's telling you, well, if I don't talk, people at home are going to think I don't know what to say right now. And you have to know that you're doing it. You got to be better than that. You have to know that doesn't matter. Turn that voice off and just enjoy the experience and let people at home do the same.
In addition to hosting this podcast, Kraig leads the Kann Advisory Group, focused on elevating communication for companies and individuals. Company consulting, empowering team and individual workshops, mind-altering webinars, and Kraig's inspiring keynotes for your conference or company meeting. They're all on the menu of services. Kann Advisory helps companies clarify their message, helps professionals build and showcase their brand, and helps everyone present their best selves. So if you're the leader of a team or company looking to give your employees a game-changing one-day experience, or an individual who wants to become a speaker and presenter that gets other people talking, visit cannadvisory.com. And when you do connect, make sure to mention the Tracks to Success podcast to receive a special discount on any of the Kann Advisory services. That's cannadvisory.com. Now back to the interview.
Talking with the great Joe Buck from Fox Sports. A couple of more things before we go, Joe. Let's talk about talking. Now, I spent a number of years in broadcasting. I now spend a lot of time public speaking, being in front of corporate groups, teaching presentation skills, branding, and how to sell. Not just products, but how to sell yourself, because people buy you first, then they buy the product, which I think you also tie into. Warren Buffett actually says that the one skill above anything else that anybody could have for the greatest amount of success is communication skills and public speaking. You've obviously got that. I'm sure you speak to a lot of groups. What's your message, and how important is it in what you do for a living to connect to an audience?
What's my message? I think the message has to be tailored to who you're talking to. Your message is different to a father-son banquet than it is to a group of insurance salesmen in Philadelphia. I think if you are open and honest, people can identify that right away. And I think if you're relaxed, I think that translates into people actually accepting what it is that you say a lot more than if you just look hurried or sweaty. And I think when you're hurried and sweaty, you're not really being yourself. Nobody walks. I'm not hurried and sweaty when I'm talking to my wife. I'm not hurried and sweaty when I'm talking to my kids. I try to talk to a group of people, no matter the size of it, like I'm talking to my best friends in or out of golf carts as we're about to tee off. And I think people like that. I think the message can change, but you can't. And I think you need to be as real as you can be. And so if I'm talking to a group, I talk about a lot of the stuff that you and I have talked about on this podcast. I talk about my insecurities. I talk about where I've messed up. I talk about the work I put in. I talk about the satisfaction I take from doing a good job. But I think everybody can relate to that. Mm-hmm. And I think the more you're prepared, the more relaxed you are. And if you walk into an appearance or you walk into an NFC championship game and you're not ready yet, it's going to show eventually in the broadcast or in the presentation. And I think my message is outwork everybody around you. It's simple, but I look at all those people you talked about, Jim and Mike and Al and right on down the line, and I want to not just outwork them in the prep, but I want to be so prepared that I can then be myself, because there's only one me. Mm-hmm. And there's only one person who thinks like I think when a broadcast or a game starts, just like they all, that's true of anybody. So I'm going to be my most real self, and that's going to have to be good enough. And the day it's not is the day that I'll be gone.
This podcast is called Tracks to Success, and we've learned a lot about your track. And I try to give people a glimpse into people who've achieved success, no matter what they do, all walks. And you kind of just gave something right there. If somebody wants to be a game changer, is it all about just outworking the other people? What else is it? How can people be a game changer, no matter what they do?
Well, I honestly believe that stuff comes along organically. I don't think, and I could be wrong, and you've done way more work on this than I have, but off the top of my head, I think to be a game changer, you can't go in and go, today I'm going to be a game changer. I think that has to build over time. I don't think you just drop out of the sky and then all of a sudden, you're a game changer. There have been a few people like that throughout history. I'm not one of them. But I think it comes with the preparation. It comes with being relaxed. It comes with, I think volume sometimes is a big part of it. If you come out on stage or you stand behind a microphone and you're soft, man or woman, and you sound like you can be run over, nobody's going to listen to you. It's about being confident. It's about being prepared, but it's about being you. Again, if you're not a game changer, that's fine. Not everybody is. But if you have the potential to be, I think it's only unlocked when you are yourself and you're your most vulnerable. And when you're vulnerable, people identify with that. They lock in, they compare it to how they feel about themselves, and then they're able to absorb your message better, and then you become a game changer. That's how I look at it. I don't think there's any magic formula. I don't think there's a drink that you can drink, maybe aside from a vodka soda before you go on stage, that really makes you a genius. Yeah. You just have to work your ass off and be yourself and see if people like it.
See, you and I could do the same thing. I tell people all the time when they get nervous to go on stage, I go, look, if you're at the cocktail party, spend a little time, shake some hands, get to know people, relax, I say a gin and soda. You could say vodka soda. I said, have one, relax. Yeah. I said, just don't have 6, because then it becomes a real problem. Then you're in trouble, right?
Yeah, then you're dead. I mean, my dad told a story, and I've never said it before, but it just makes me laugh, and it makes me think of him, because he said he was hosting a radio show after a game one night at Musial and Biggie's, which was Stan Musial's restaurant in St. Louis, and they get there. He has a couple of drinks. Then he has another. Then they're delayed. Then they have one more. And they're about to come on the air. And it's in a restaurant setting, like a bar type setting. And he said, so I went into the bathroom, and all of a sudden I'm drunk, and I'm splashing water on my face. And I look in the mirror, and I'm trying to welcome people into the broadcast. And I'm like, good evening, everybody, and welcome to... And he tried it 3 times, and he left. He walked out of the restaurant bar, went wherever the hell he went, and the theme music started, and they said, now from New Zealand Biggies, here's our host, Jack Buck, and da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da, and nobody was there. And then they started the music again. Nobody was there. And he's like, me not being there was a hell of a lot better than me being there being drunk. So, yeah, don't get drunk.
No,
but
no.
If you're going to take the edge off, I'm not a professional, and I know it can lead to bad things, but I would be less than honest if I said every once in a while I didn't have something to calm the nerves a little bit.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. That's a good thing. Yeah. By the way, that was a little bit of a Harry Carey impersonation. That's what just...
Well, that's... Hi. Oh, that kind of breathy,
Yes.
But those guys never, the perception was, and it is of Mike Shannon in St. Louis, and I'm sure it definitely was of Harry in the booth. Those guys were not drunk. It just was, when they'd go, how about a nice frosty Budweiser? It's just the way he said it, and it made, you're at a ball game, and Harry's up there drinking again. They didn't drink. I mean, maybe on a hot day he might have sipped one, but just stop with all that.
Absolutely. Should have done that during the Cubs World Series victory, by the way. Okay, last thing, Joe. Maybe it's the Bassmasters Classic. I doubt it. But if your career ended, we're talking about what you would be known for. One thing that stands out to me, you've been at one network, okay? And loyalty is not a big thing anymore, as we all know. No matter what line of work we're in, loyalty is sometimes a very one-way street. But what's the thing you would be most proud of if your career ended right now? If you stopped and said, I'm going to spend time with my kids and whatever else, which we know, by the way, childhood is a very short season, so we want to spend that time.
Yes.
But if it ended now, if your career ended, what would a guy who's been the voice of so many great moments already and so many big games want to be remembered for?
I'm the curse breaker. I show up in 2004. Red Sox win their first World Series in 86 years. I'm there in 2016. Cubs are in the World Series for the first time since 1945 and win it for the first time since 1908, 108 years later. I'm there in 2005, and the White Sox win it for the first time in forever. If the Cleveland Indians win it, and they win their first World Series since the 40s, I will have hit them all. And so I think, for every fan in Boston who goes, oh, he hates the Red Sox, he blah, blah, blah. Every time I show up, they win. No, he hates the Patriots. Okay, well, every time I show up, I've done 5 Super Bowls or whatever the number, 6, I don't even know. And they've been in it a few times, and I haven't called them losing except once. I just kind of lied. But for the most part, I'm the curse breaker. And I think I've done it in a fun way that makes me want to come back for more and makes me miss it when we're in a pandemic and we're not working, and makes me miss it as a fan. I'm still a huge fan of the sports that I cover. So I think I've tried to go about it the right way. I've tried to be a good person, and I've tried to be a good father and husband. And I'm proud of the last part more than any of the other parts.
Joe, congrats on the book. Congrats on the podcast. You've left a great mark in sports. I appreciate it. I know your dad is proud. I'm so thankful to have had you on this podcast and kicking off season 2. Thank you so much.
All right, Kraig. Now tell me, was that better than Tirico in season 1 or not?
It was pretty damn good.
Okay, good. That's all I wanted.
In our conversation, Joe talked about how he's handled the spotlight of calling some of the biggest games in sports while also managing criticism that comes with being front and center on television, which leads me to my one last thing. If you want to be an influencer, stay true to you. Be yourself. Continue to devote your time and energy into what allows you to put forth the best you. I once heard that if people aren't critiquing you or talking about you, then you aren't doing something people are paying attention to. Our job is to be the best we can be, regardless of what others think. Joe is one of the best to have ever called games. His way might not be for everybody, but is anybody's? I wanted him to kick off season 2 because I like to stay close to my own broadcasting roots and have my debut guest each season be someone who has great talent and who I believe does it the right way. Like Mike Tirico in season 1, I'm honored to have had Joe lead the way this season. Joe is a brand. Our brand is what happens once we leave the room. It's how we've made other people feel and what we do to bring value to others. If we become focused on everybody else's opinion, we take away time and energy from getting better and doing more and making the right impact. So figure out what drives you, not others. Become the best at it and focus efforts on getting better and better. Do that, and you'll have others seeing you for the good you do, and your tracks to success will become a whole lot easier. Do me a favor. Please take a moment to rate this podcast and give it a review. We have a great season ahead with amazing guests and their inspiring stories. And if you have someone you think you'd like on the show, email me at info@canadvisory.com. I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, I'm Kraig Kann. Thanks for listening.
Summit. You've been listening to Tracks to Success, brought to you by Presentation Partners, visual storytellers passionate about connecting presenters with their audience. Don't forget to subscribe to the show for more great interviews and thoughts on reaching your highest personal and professional summit. You can follow Kraig on Twitter and Instagram using the handle @Kraig Kann. And for exclusive Tracks to Success content and news about our upcoming guests, you can find Tracks to Success on Twitter. It's @Tracks to Success.